What's up, tubers? Tio here, Simplistic Fishing, coming at you tonight to do just a little bit of talking about fishing. I think we just need to sit down and kind of talk about what's going on, the environment that we're fishing in, the spring-like temperatures that we've been getting, where the fish are going, where we should expect to find them, all that good stuff. We just did a video a few weeks ago about Bob Sandlin and where to fish, and I'm actually up there right now doing some pre-fishing, so I want to talk to you guys about that too, and hopefully you can learn from some of my mistakes I've made so far, and hopefully we'll get you guys all some fish as well. Let's talk about it. Let's go. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this thing. So I'm gonna kind of split this into two different videos here. Not really two different videos, but two different segments in the video. So first off, I'm gonna talk to you guys about my top 4 baits right now. Those are gonna be my top 4 baits. These are gonna be the 4 baits that I'm gonna use this weekend when I go out fishing. And why only 4? Because I'm actually fishing on the back of the boat this time instead of the front. So I'm gonna go with my buddy Shannon, and I don't want to bring a bunch of rods on his boat and make a huge mess. So I've got 4 rods, 4 different techniques pretty much that we're gonna roll with, and we're gonna see what happens. Now, obviously, I might have to switch when I get there. Things can be different, but I know one thing: we're fishing fairly shallow. We're probably gonna fish some cover and stuff like that, brushes and brush and docks and things like that. So that's gonna be really what these baits are related to. So let's go ahead and talk about these first, and then the second half, I want to talk to you guys about some of the failures that I've been having on the water lately. Maybe not last weekend because I wasn't on the water last weekend, but February 10th and the couple weekends right up before February 10th, so end of January going into February, man, I was getting my tail kicked. But I want to talk to you guys about that, talk to you guys about my experience as well, my first day on Sandlin too, and hopefully you guys will learn from that. So let's go ahead and talk about top baits right now. So I think, honestly, until really they start staging up really good, which is probably happening as we speak. It's a beautiful day outside. It's getting warmer. The full moon in February, the last full moon in February, is actually this Saturday. So that means that's probably going to be the kicker to get everything started. There may be a few that have already gone out there and started to spawn, but for the most part, I think you're going to start seeing the real big waves of them. For that first wave is probably going to come this weekend, first weekend of March, maybe the second weekend of March, somewhere in there they start spawning, but they're definitely going to be pushing up this weekend. It's time, it's getting warmer, things are starting to bud up a little bit, so definitely a good time to look. So one of the things that I've had a ton of success on, and it's been success from the very beginning, and it is definitely a novice lure. It's not something crazy, but I'm telling you, I've probably caught more fish on this. Other than a shaky head, I've caught more fish on this than anything else. And that's just going to be a regular standard Senko, just a 5-inch Senko. I'm trying to get it off my rod here. And I'm just going to Wacky Rig it. And I don't have my Wacky Rig tool in my garage, so I don't have the little Wacky Rig loop on it. But there is my Wacky Rig right there. You can see it. And that is all I do. I just Wacky Rig it up like that. I put that little weedless thing back on there so I can toss it around cover, I can toss it around docks, all kinds of things. And that is actually going to be probably one of the baits that I catch the most fish on. That's just a Wacky Rig Senko. Now, if you're new to fishing, you're like, okay, well that's cool. Dang it, I just got my line all jacked up. Get it out of there. All right, so now we're good. So you're like, okay, that's cool, but where do I throw that? Well, really, you can throw a Wacky Rig Senko anywhere. There's nowhere that you can't throw a Wacky Rig Senko, but some good places to fish a Wacky Rig Senko. One would be docks. So you're going to look out there for docks that are headed into or close to spawning flats. So in other words, like when you're out there fishing, you want to go out there and kind of look at the lake that you're on, or whatever kind of fishery you're on, and really kind of imagine as you got a bunch of highways, right? And on each one of those highways, every time you see something that comes out, which to us is a point, that's kind of a stop sign. So just visualize that whole lake and visualize there's highways all through there. And every time there's a cutout or somewhere like that, there's a stop sign. Each one of those stop signs is likely going to be a stop sign for the bass, especially if you do that with a creek channel. So if you just take a creek channel or a river channel and you just make it look like a highway and you figure out where the exits are and where the closest places are to stage up from that main river channel, you can just follow those back. And it's a really good way to understand what's going on with the fishes. So on this Senko, you go and you find those creek beds that are leading back into those spawning flats, and you fish those isolated docks and the isolated cover that's before you get back there to the main flat. So you're kind of fishing right before it starts getting super shallow. Fish that Senko round. It is super slow. You got to be patient. You got to throw it out and literally let it fall all the way to the ground. It will take several seconds depending on how deep you are. And then once you get it all the way to the ground, let it set there. And then you're just going to raise the rod tip up. So this is my rod tip here. I'm just going to raise it up just like that. I'm not moving anything. I'm just raising it with my wrist. So I raise it up and you'll feel it kind of flutter up. And then once you get up to your height, then you're just going to let it fall back down. Just follow your rod tip, giving it a slack line the entire time, letting it fall, and you will be amazed at how many fish you get. Now you can throw this up in the grass too, like around the grass edges. You can have a lot of success with those. You can even throw it around bridge pillars and let it just slowly fall down the bridge pillars, and you'll be surprised at how much you catch. So go out, get you a package of Wacky Rig Senkos, and get you a package of those wacky hooks. I like the weedless ones because they just help me out a little bit better. But get those, and if you can get a wacky tool, definitely do that. It gives you like a little circle, little rubber thing that you can put in the middle of the Senko here. And so instead of it ripping the plastic, you actually hook it right through the rubber thing, and that Senko can stay on there forever. You can use it a ton. So definitely go out, get you a 5-inch Senko. I like that red color with that watermelon in there. Totally up to you what color you want. I like black too, and definitely like watermelon. All right, so that's going to be a slow one for you. Let's stay on the slow baits. Next thing I'm going to go with this weekend is I'm going to stay slow, right? I'm going to stay pretty darn slow and really work the areas that I'm in as long as I'm getting some bites. And that is definitely going to be a jig. So it is jig season, guys. It's time to get out, throw the jig, and actually have some success with the thing. So, of course, I use the jig year long. I use it in the winter. I use it in the summer. I use it in the spring and the fall. I don't think there's a single season that I don't have a jig on my rod. But it seems like there's certain times of year where I do a lot better. And pre-spawn and post-spawn seem to be my best times with a jig. So here I went with a 4/0 axle jig by Swim Jit by 6 cents. You can see it here. And I paired that up with Berkeley power baits. Don't even remember what those things are called, but they're basically just like the Z-Crawls. They're kind of very similar to it. You can kind of see the pattern of it. And I'm just going to throw that up, same type thing. I'm throwing it into the cover, throw it deep into the cover, as far deep into the cover as I can. And I'm also going to throw it underneath those docks and let it fall all the way to the bottom. And then I'm just going to pop it a couple times with my rod, so it'll just be a 1-2. So it pops it up about 2 or 3 foot, and then I let it fall back down to the bottom. The key is when you're letting it fall back down to the bottom that you watch this rod tip. So when it's falling back down to the bottom, let's say right here, it's not touching the ground. You probably can't even see the line, but as it's falling down to the ground, I'm going to follow it down with my rod tip. I don't want a ton of slack in there because I want to be able to get the bite as soon as I see it, but I don't want any tension on it at all, because if I do that, it'll slow the fall and jack it up. So it's all about typically when it's on the fall. So either right when you throw it in is when you're going to get the bite, or you're going to get it after it sets there for a second, and then you pop it up as it's falling down again. Boom, you'll feel that little bitty tick, and that's when it's time to jack them. So definitely a jig. I like this color jig. It's like this brownish color. I like the kind of brown color, kind of going for more of a bluegill style type stuff. But man, black and blue is hard to beat as well. So black and blue, or something like a bluegill color, I think you're going to be in good shape. All right, next up, we got 2 more because we only have 4. We were talking about fishing heavy cover, right? And you guys have seen me do this back in the river on my home lake on Ray Hubbard. And that is going to be rigging up just a regular old school tube. I've got this, I've got it pegged, right? So there's my peg you see at the top. I've got just an 1/8 ounce weight on it, and I just rigged up a regular old salty tube. So nothing fancy, but I'm telling you, this thing is a fish killer. It's definitely something I want if I'm fishing around brush and stuff like that. A lot of times I'll use that, the Rage Crawl or the Rage Menace, all that stuff. But I think I've had more success with tubes than anything else. So I'm definitely going to stay on the tube train as long as I can, because I've caught some really big fish with tubes and had a lot of success with them. So go out, get you a package of tubes. It's just a 4/0 EWG hook that I'm using in there, and an 1/8 ounce weight with a little rubber peg on it, and you're good to go. You're going to take that tube and you're going to put it places where you think you're going to get hung up. So if you see the bush, don't flip to the side of the bush. Don't flip to the front of the bush. Don't flip behind the bush. Literally flip into the bush. So when you do your flip, you're literally flipping to see if you can get the bait to set on the main trunk and follow its way down to the root. If you're doing that when you're flipping these baits and you're getting that far into the bushes, you're doing way better than most of the other people that are out there fishing, and your percentages of catching fish are going to go skyrocketing. You'll be surprised at how much a 6-inch difference when you're flipping, whether you're close to that cover or whether you're 6 inches off that cover, makes a difference. So make sure when you're flipping this stuff around, you're getting as tight to the cover as you can. You literally want to hit it and let it fall down the side of that cover. That's the best way to catch it. All right, we got one more to go before I go on my little rant about what I've been doing wrong. Next one is going to be a ChatterBait. I think you guys knew that was coming. It's just ChatterBait season. You know, that fire crawl one with the red trailer, that's going to be really good right now, especially as we're getting into pre-spawn. Also, anything that really relates to bluegill or shad, pretty much any type of chatterbait you want. The white chartreuse are good. I'm actually going to roll with this one this weekend. So it's got a little bit of white on it, you can see, but then I actually went with more of a watermelon with some black and purple on my trailer. So should be interesting. That's just a little beaver bait trailer. I don't even think I've opened up the tails yet. I just put that on there last night. So I'll pop those tails off real quick and you guys can kind of see that one more time. It's just very effective. Now there's a couple ways that I'm going to use this chatterbait. So if we're going down the bank line and we're flipping cover, I can throw the chatterbait in. So let's say we're doing docks. This docks is probably the easiest. So we're doing docks, and for whatever reason, all other my rods are down. All I have is this chatterbait in my hand. A lot of people are just going to go to the dock and they're going to skip that chatterbait underneath the dock, around the pillars and stuff, and then reel it back. And that is definitely a good way that you can catch fish. But the other way that you can catch them is actually fish it like a jig. So I'm going to flip it underneath there. I'm going to let it fall down to the bottom. Once it falls down to the bottom, I'm literally going to do it just like we did the Wacky Rig. I'm just going to lift up my rod tip and let it flurry up, and then I'm going to let it fall back down, free fall back down. And on that free fall is usually where you're going to get your bite. So it's pretty interesting because I can go up there and I can throw it around the banks. I can throw it up into nasty cover and retrieve it that way. Or I could actually just use it like a jig, throw it out, and literally almost hop it back to the boat. So several different ways you can use it. Chatterbait, is known to catch some really big fish this time of year. So make sure that you get one of those on your rod today. All right, now going to part 2 of the video. Part 2 of the video is going to be, where the heck are we supposed to be fishing? So, it's crazy. I talked to you guys about bobsailing a couple weeks ago and where I would fish in late January, early February. And even in that video, because I was talking to you guys probably, I said, I don't think that they're all the way up in the backs of these coves and these pockets yet. Where they should be is on the secondary points or on the main lake points entering in to those spawning flats. I told you guys that. And then I went down to Palestine, late January, water temperatures like 55, 56 degrees, looked really good. The news that I got from the locals and stuff was fish are super shallow, fishing 1 to 4 foot, should be good. There were tournament bags down there. There's one guy that caught 27-pound bag one day, the day before he went there. So I was thinking, man, this is going to be good. So I go and I find 1 to 4 foot, and I fish the heck out of it, man. I fish it with chatterbaits, I fish it with spinnerbaits, I fish it with Texas rig brush hogs, I fish it with all the things that you're supposed to fish it with, right? I'm flipping, I'm doing all the good things. I can't find jack squat shallow. Like, literally can't find anything shallow. The only fish that I caught that was semi-shallow was I caught it on a creek channel turn in the back of Kickapoo, where it dropped from like 1 foot to 2 foot to like 5 or 6 foot, and I caught him right on that turn. I just had a horrible days. Like, I'd catch like one fish. I caught a couple fish on chatterbaits, and that was it. Now, I did have success The success that I had was actually with an A-rig, and fishing the bridges around the lake with an A-rig was actually getting me the fish that I wanted to get, but there were only a couple of bridges that I was finding them on. And unfortunately, when it came time to tournament day, we started on those hot spots that I was on, and those fish ghosted me. They weren't even there. I don't know what happened. They were too pressured or what was going on. So our only other option was to go back and fish shallow. So that's exactly what we did. Now, this is where we made the mistake, and I think I made the same mistake. I carried this same mistake on into Bob Sandlin, and I'm not going to do it this weekend when I get back out there. I'm going to be smarter than that, and then watch they probably move back shallower. But everybody was telling me fish shallow. In my brain, you know, it's been super, super warm here in North Texas, 70s, even got into the 80s a couple times already. So my brain and everything is already thinking spring, 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 spring. And in spring, I'm usually in the far back stuff that you can get. I mean, it's stupid how stupid shallow these fish will get. And I was already in that mode. People said 1 to 4 foot. I thought, boom, I'm going to the back. I'm going to the back where these creeks are. I'm going to the back where the flats are. And that's mainly what I fished. I fished in the back of everything. I did that the whole time I was in Palestine. And even though the times I was catching fish were actually, if I looked at it on a map, were actually like great staging spots before they went back in those flats, it never clicked with me. You know, the A-rig thing to me was just a bridge. I wasn't paying attention to how everything was set up, and I wish I would have, because I probably would have had a lot more success had I just pulled back and said, wait a second, you're fishing too far back. And what I mean by that is I wasn't fishing too shallow. I really agree the fish were probably in 1 to 5 foot, something like that. But I was fishing too far back. I'd already skipped the whole secondary thing. I literally went from winter to full-on spring and forgot about that whole in-between spot. And I believe that's why I really struggled. When I went back out to Sandlin, I did the same exact thing. Fell into the same rut. Thought, man, these fish got to be shallow. I go up, I skip everything I even talked to you guys about on the video, and I go straight to the backs of these coves and these pockets that are on the north side of the lake, and really sucked. You know, I caught one fish that was off a little secondary point, and even though I had caught him off a secondary point, I still wanted to go further back and see if I could catch one super shallow. And after all that's going on, I end up seeing a buddy out there on Sandlin that's part of the Ray Hubbard Bass Club, and he's having a great day. Caught 18 pounds, had an 8-pound bass. Guess what he was throwing? You got it right. He's throwing the A-rig. And I'm like, man, I can't go back to that A-rig. It burnt me last tournament. I'd love to go back. I think that's probably where they are. But you know, if they're on the A-rig, that means they're still staging. They're not back there spawning. So I guess the whole, I told you I was going to ramble a little bit, but the whole point of the story is when someone tells you that they're shallow, just remember they can be shallow without being in the very backs of the pockets or in those flats. They can be in 4 foot off a main lake point. They can be in 1 foot off a secondary point, or 2 foot off a secondary point, and a little bitty brush pile that's sticking out of the water. Just because they're shallow doesn't mean they're all the way back. So just keep that in your mind as you go out there. I'm sure I'm not the only one that gets tricked by this. It happens to me every stinking year. And it usually takes me a couple fishing trips to like kick myself in the head and say, wait a second, you forgot there's a transition from winter to spring. Don't forget about that. They've got to make that first stop before they get way back in there. So keep that in consideration. Definitely go out, check out our lake breakdown, simplisticfishing.com. We can show you where all that cover is, where the offshore stuff is. Focus on the secondary points, maybe still some main lake points, but really focusing in on those secondary areas. Find those spawning flats, find them and pull back off of them just a hair, not a ton. See if you can find any places that they would stop around cover, around docks, around rocks, points, drop-offs, things like that that are leading back into those spawning areas. They're likely there, and they're likely not back in that spawning area yet, although now that I say this, with that full moon coming, some of them are probably going to get up in there, but you'll still be able to catch those fish on those secondary areas, pre-spawn and post-spawn, because they'll stop there on their way back out as well. Anyways, guys, I hope this helps you out. Remember, go out, tie you on a chatterbait, tie you on a tube. Tubes are great. Make sure you go with that wacky worm when times get tough. You will catch some fish with that. And last but not least, the other one that we had on there was the old famous jig. You can't go wrong with the jig in the spring. Guys, I hope this helps you out. Hopefully we'll get some live video for you this weekend to share with you next week. And we'll see if what I'm talking to you about actually actually makes a difference. Lord, I hope so, because fishing's been tough for me, but I know it'll get better. And hey, any day on the water is a blessed day, so I'm super happy to have the opportunity. Guys, go check out the website, simplicityfishing.com, and until next time, hope you catch your PB. Take it easy. Bye now.